Michael Moore and Rush Limbaugh agree. The bailout is for the elite. We have clearly entered the fourth dimension. Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. And in this historic and chaotic week, do we have issues? The Senate is about to pass Bailout 2, the sequel. Then it goes back to the House. It's probably got enough goodies attached to pass there, too, this time. But all week, the bailout battle has made for strange allies. Looking left and right, we saw Congressman Dennis Kucinich and Jeb Hensarling both attacking the centrist establishment. Can you believe it? The revolution must really be underway. Some people are even rising up against themselves.
We need less government. We need less regulation. Government has a clear responsibility to act in defense of the public interest, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
It's easy to blame Washington and Wall Street for the money crisis, but could the unethical, greedy enemy be us, a cheating culture with luxury fever? We will ask. And with some hindsight, we can also now ask, did the Olympics do anything to make China more free? We'll ask that tonight, too. But first, here are this week's online video picks. Number one, you could be forgiven this week if you confused the business news channel with the scary movie channel. The producers at overthinkingit.com aren't helping sort it out either.
What the hell is this?
I know many Americans have questions tonight. How did we reach this point in our economy? How will the solution I propose work?
Who's stupid enough to steal from us?
Many borrowers took out loans larger than they could afford, assuming that they could sell or refinance their homes at a higher price later on.
So what do you propose?
The plan is big enough to solve a serious problem.
How much you want?
The federal government would put up to $700 billion taxpayer dollars on the line.
Shit. I want to hear proposition.
We boosted confidence in money market mutual funds and acted to prevent major investors from intentionally driving down stocks for their own personal gain.
What stop them getting to you?
The government is the one institution with the patience and resources to buy these assets and hold them until markets return to normal. When that happens, money will flow back to the Treasury as these assets are sold. And we expect that much, if not all, of the tax dollars we invest will be paid back.
I thought my jokes were bad. If we don't deal with this now, soon little Gamble here won't be able to get a nickel for his grandma. And as for the television's so-called plan...
In the long run, Americans have good reason to be confident in our economic strength.
Why don't you give me a call when you want to start taking things a little more seriously?
Thank you for listening. May God bless you.
Bruce Wayne for Treasury Secretary, that's what I say. Video pick number two, the harmonic convergence taking place this week is the vice presidential debate, the beginning of the Jewish New Year, happy 5769 everyone, and the Eid at the end of Ramadan yesterday. Everybody's got a religion. Here's a clip of Governor Sarah Palin in church in 2005 from a documentary being widely viewed online.
Father, we thank you today. We come against every hindrance of the enemy, standing our way today. In the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus, every form of witchcraft is what we rebuke in the name of Jesus. Father, make a way now. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's all be seated.
So on one level, she appears to be running for vice president to fight witchcraft. But despite viral videos like that, the Obama campaign is concerned about pockets of the Jewish vote, especially in places like Palm Beach County, Florida, with a lot of senior citizens. But there's another Sarah who'll be appealing to her own Jewish grandmother in Florida and wants you to appeal to yours if you're Jewish. Comedian Sarah Silverman from her very viral video called The Great Schlep.
If Barack Obama doesn't become the next president of the United States, I'm going to blame the Jews. I am. And I know you're saying like, oh my God, Sarah, I can't believe you're saying this. Jews are the most liberal, scrappy, civil rightsy people there are. Yes, that's true. But you're forgetting a whole large group of Jews that are not that way, and they go by several aliases. Nana, Papa, Zadie, Bubby, plain old Grandma and Grandpa. These are the people who vote in Florida, and the Florida vote can make or break an election. If you don't think that's true, why don't you think back to 2 elections ago when a little man named Al Gore got f***ed by Florida?
Sarah, don't talk so dirty in front of your booby. Video pic number 4 from Debate Porridge. Have you noticed that the election is on everybody's lips? You could be, I don't know, hanging upside down from a rope in Central Park and people would still start chatting with you about the election.
Been able to follow politics at all? Has anyone been updating you on what's going on?
What's going on right now?
Apparently McCain refused to debate Obama tomorrow night.
Really?
Yeah, he's stepping back, and Obama's saying he still is going to debate on Friday. So
Can he do that? How does that help him?
Well, he's saying he wants to get to business and go to Washington, and he doesn't want to politic anymore, so he's suspending his campaign.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's very clever, that guy. He's very sneaky.
I know. Maybe he'll do the drop with you later tonight. We were going to ask you because of your powers of illusion. Do you think you could make Sarah Palin disappear as your next act?
Wait, but so somebody can just decide not to show up to the presidency?
Sure.
Barack is such an amazing speaker as well, so it's really interesting.
Well, he's also up 9 points on him today.
Is he?
Yeah, he's up 9 points on him.
Really?
It's going to be a poll. So when you make the drop, maybe you could show up to the debate on Friday and sub in for McCain.
No thanks.
When you smile upside down like that, is it really a frown? That, of course, was Daredevil David Blaine. He stopped suspending his campaign after 60 hours. And finally, pick number 5. Everyone's remembering Paul Newman for Cool Hand Luke and racing cars. Here is a video from his own foundation about Newman's other great act, charity.
The food business literally got started because one Christmas I decided that Christmas presents to the neighbors, the bottle of wine and all that kind of stuff was just kind of passé. So I'd always made my own salad dressing, so I got wine bottles and filled it up with salad dressing and took it to the neighbors for Christmas presents. At about the 1st of February, I got people knocking on my door saying, "Where's the second bottle?"
Paul turned to me after we got the first report that the supermarkets were putting in orders. He said, "You know, there's going to be a profit from this thing." He said, "I'm an actor and you're a writer. We can't make money out of the food business. Let's give it all away to charity."
I want to thank all of you for your generosity, both in terms of time and money, and your devotion to the whole Noel Gang camps. And I get a lot of stuff back, and it's the best kind of feedback that you can get, and the contribution to the comfort and the needs of the children are extraordinary. I thank you for it. Just lay back and raise hell. Bye.
We'll miss you, Paul. And those are this week's online video picks. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Here's the latest on the bailout. The Senate is expected to pass the bill tonight. It's different from the one rejected Monday. It has tax breaks for business that the Republicans like. Democrats get 24 million households out of the alternative minimum tax. It more than doubles the FDIC's insurance on banking deposits. It even expands mental health care. The House is expected to okay it next, we will see later in the week, and almost all of it puts us further in debt. So who is to blame for messing up the economy so badly? Since this debt crisis began, we hear blame pinned on homebuyers, local mortgage brokers, politicians, and Wall Streeters, and others. Could this mean we're all greedy and unethical, trying to live too high, losing track of right and wrong in the process? Cornell economist Robert H. Frank joins us. He has written Luxury Fever and Falling Behind. David Callahan is here as well, senior fellow at the Demos think tank and author of The Cheating Culture. Welcome to both of you. And I should say that you have previously written a textbook, Principles of Economics, with the current Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke, correct?
That's right, Brian.
Have you spoken to him recently?
No, I don't dare call him. He's got a lot on his plate.
So how do you think we got here?
You know, I think it's very easy to blame lots of different actors in this game, but I think there's really only one set of actors that deserves the ultimate blame, and that's the people who didn't make the right set of rules. Greed is kind of a basic human motive. Everyone's self-interested at some fundamental level. Of course, we see noble impulses too, but everyone looks out for their own interests, and when there's an opportunity, people take it. If it's not in the common interest, it needs to be forbidden by rule, and the rules this time around were written in such a way that a lot of what we've seen happen was just inevitable.
You agree?
Well, I think that greed is a natural human impulse, but you know, greed thrives when the conditions are right. Alan Greenspan said in 2002, around the time that the Enron and WorldCom scandals were happening, he said, you know, it's not that human beings are any more greedy than they used to be. It's that the opportunities for greed have grown enormously. And those can be broken down, those opportunities, into a couple different categories. One, people are more likely to be greedy when the watchdogs are asleep, as Bob says, and certainly that's been the case in the real estate sector. I mean, everybody knew that this sector badly needed regulation. Everybody's been saying that for years. It didn't happen. Second, greed thrives when the rewards for winners are huge. And that has been the case in this winner-take-all society in which we live, to name one of Bob's titles of Bob's books. The inequality is huge. If you're a winner, you can make millions and millions of dollars. The guy who ran Countrywide, the biggest mortgage broker firm in America, made $400 million during the boom years. Finally, greed thrives when there's a culture that is permissive, when the values of the culture allow it, and that has been the case. We live in an era where your self-worth is often seems contingent on your net worth, and where all of our icons and heroes are rich. So we don't have a lot of other role models.
I want to go to our next video right here because I think you raised something that's very relevant. Has the economy lost its way? Congressman Dennis Kucinich said on the House floor this week, yes, for sure.
Industrial capitalism can finally be destroyed as we finish hollowing out our economy by substituting casino socialism, where the only real product is debt, where hard work is shaping raw materials into a product for a profit becomes so yesterday, and we lead Americans to the gaming tables. Work becomes denigrated and wagering becomes the road to wealth. As Steve Zarlenga of the American Monetary Institute observed, you only have to make a fortune once. The top hedge fund manager in 2006 made $1.7 billion, and in 2007, some $3.7 billion. Both paid a lower tax rate for much of their earnings than people who clean the bedpans of the sick. And of course, with that nasty death tax under attack by working families, because almost 5 out of every 1,000 Americans pay it, that wealth can go on forever, just like the landed families of England and America have maintained their economic status for hundreds of years. Precious money needed to bring national health care, reindustrialization of America, the repair of our infrastructure, wider availability of quality education becomes secondary to keeping this artificial real estate bubble going.
Gentleman's
and speculators are winning, and this is the system we're saving.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Dennis Kucinich explaining on the House floor earlier this week why he was going to vote against the original version of the bailout bill. Of all the statements on the House floor, that one is perhaps the most, certainly among the most, viewed as a separate clip on YouTube. And Robert Frank, I wonder what you thought of that. I mean, that's pretty strong language, but he's talking about industrial capitalism giving way to casino socialism, where labor becomes denigrated and wagering becomes the road to wealth. And of course, we bail out the wagerers when things go too badly.
That's true. The rules were set up in such a way to encourage exactly that kind of behavior. We were trying to make money buying and selling houses. A lot of families, though, were caught up in that cycle through no real guilty behavior on their part.
When you say through no real guilty behavior on their part, I mean, I know a lot of people who, you know, maybe live down the block or around the corner from someone who took an adjustable rate mortgage or a subprime loan with no interest, no down payment, whatever, who got caught in all of this, foreclosed upon, and say, that stupid idiot, they should know better than to take, you know, that kind of a loan if they can't afford it.
Well, think about it this way, though. You're a parent, you've got a couple of kids of school age. What's your most important goal? You want to see them get into a decent school. In the United States, really in most countries, the schools track neighborhood house prices. Here it's because school budgets get financed by real estate taxes, but it's true in every country. So to get your child into an above-average school or even an average one, you've got to match average spending on a house for your community. That's just the rule. And if others are spending more on houses, then you've got to too, or else your kids go to below-average schools. And when the rules were relaxed, and here was the key step, when I bought my first house, I needed 25% down. I've got children today who are able to buy houses for $0 down. With adjustable rate mortgages, balloon payments, and so on. So that means you can bid more for a house. Some families will. They'll get into a better school. What do? Well, I'll bid too. I don't want to see my kids go to
And it wasn't that long ago that people were bidding higher than the asking price.
Exactly.
And having these auctions for regular homes in regular neighborhoods. Right. Your book is The Cheating Culture. Is taking that kind of a mortgage a form of cheating?
Well, we have seen a lot of cheating during this real estate boom. Mortgage fraud has been prevalent, and one of the most common forms of mortgage fraud at the very low level is people lying on their mortgage applications about their income, about their assets. And one reason people have lied is in order to get in before the prices go up even higher. And
because people don't you check? I mean, when I applied for my mortgage, I own an apartment in New York City, well, you know, with my wife and 2 kids.
Well, this is where the other form of cheating comes in, which is the mortgage brokerage firms have been deeply involved in unethical behavior during this real estate crazed period. And the mortgage brokers basically coaching people to lie on their mortgage applications and then turning around and selling these mortgages into large pools.
So that means nobody was checking, and I mean, certainly nobody encouraged me to, and you know, I was kind of scared, you know, maybe I'm just naive, but I thought, well, I have to put down all my income and everything accurately as I possibly can, because otherwise I'll never get a mortgage, because they'll know I'm not telling them the truth.
Some check, some don't check. The thing is that if you're a mortgage broker and your bonus is contingent on how many loans you close, you don't have an incentive to check very closely, and certainly you don't have an incentive if your firm is then turning around and selling this stuff into these large pools.
So who is the reformer candidate to change these rules? Sometimes it's just so hard to tell.
For more than 25 years in the Senate, McCain has fashioned himself a champion of smaller government, less regulation.
Removing regulatory, accounting, and tax impediments.
Less regulation, less regulation.
In the mid-1990s, he supported a measure to ban all new government regulation.
In 1999, you were one of the senators who helped pass deregulation of Wall Street.
No, I think the deregulation was probably helpful to the growth of our economy.
And I don't think, frankly, someone who wants to increase the burden of government regulation and higher taxes has any real understanding of economics and the economy.
Shockwaves from Wall Street to Main Street.
The Dow tumbled more than 500 points after 2 pillars of the street tumbled over the weekend.
Senator McCain appears to have changed his tune on regulation in a fundamental way.
Under my reforms, the American people will be protected by comprehensive regulations. Protected by comprehensive regulations that will apply the rules.
We believe in less regulations.
Too many firms on Wall Street have been able to count on casual oversight by regulatory agencies and government.
We need less government. We need less regulation.
Government has a clear responsibility to act in defense of the public interest, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
A lot of us saw this train wreck coming.
Okay, so as you can see on your screen there, that's from the Attack McCain site called therealmccain.com. We're going to play another video now that's making the rounds that kind of lays a similar hypocrisy at the feet of some Democrats in Congress. This is from a 2004 congressional hearing on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when Democrats in the House went after the regulators. Check it out.
Under the outstanding leadership of Mr. Frank Raines, everything in the 1992 Act has worked just fine. In fact, the GSEs have exceeded their housing goals. What we need to do today is to focus on the regulator, and this must be done in a manner so as not to impede their affordable housing mission. A mission that has seen innovation flourish from desktop underwriting to 100% loans.
I find this to be inconsistent and a rush to judgment. I get the feeling that the markets are not worried about the safety and soundness of Fannie Mae, as Ofeo says that it is, but of course, the markets are not political.
But I have seen nothing in here that suggests that the safety and soundness are at issue, and I think it serves us badly to raise safety and soundness as a kind of a general shibboleth when it does not seem to me to be an issue.
Ouch. Barney Frank, who's been so prominent in this and calling out the Republicans for their lack of support for regulation of the private sector, they're saying in 2004, don't overregulate Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Don't tell me they're in trouble. Their soundness does not seem to be at issue. This is a bipartisan scandal, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, the Congress was asleep at the switch, basically. I think what we've learned in every financial crisis is that if you can borrow money freely and an asset bubble starts to form, then people borrow more and more, because if you're buying something that's going up in price in a steady way, the more you borrow and the more you buy, the more you make.
So does it depend who you see your constituency as, who you want to regulate and who you don't want to regulate? If Fannie Mae was seen as helping provide low-income people in America's cities the opportunity to own a home, and tightening up on their credit standards would have caused more of those people not to be able to own their own homes, then Barney Frank and Maxine Waters and the others in that video say, no, there's no problem. Whereas at the same time, Republicans who don't want to see Wall Street and mortgage brokers and real estate firms regulated, they say no on them, and then the whole thing is formed.
Right, you did have conflicting goals, and there are trade-offs in many of these policy decisions. If you want to bring more low-income people into the housing market, that does mean lowering loan standards for getting a mortgage. And so there are some very uncomfortable trade-offs there. But I think in the long run, the system as a whole can't function unless there's some limit on how much people can borrow in relation to what they're able to pay.
So David Callahan, how do we change these values? As much of it as we bring back to the cheating culture, how do we change them? How do we learn from this?
Well, unfortunately, it seems that there's not a lot of evidence of learning. I mean, this scandal, it should be noted, has come only a few years after the last big wave of scandals when the regulators were asleep at the wheel. That time it was earnings fraud. Again, people saw that coming from a mile away. This time it's something else. Next time it will be something else. I think one easy thing to do is to give the watchdogs the muscle to stay ahead of the curve. Regulators are always fighting the last battle. You know,
but that's regulation. That's at the level of the technocrats. At the level of the culture, I want to show you something about the level of the culture and then come back to you, because these days it seems prosperity is morality. Even according to the ultra-popular preacher, Joel Osteen from Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. Have you seen him on TV? He reaches millions on TV and the web. This video, which is critical of him, uses subtitles to question his view of money and Christianity.
I want to talk to you today about living in total victory. A little over 2,000 years ago, they crucified Jesus on the cross. They put him in the grave, and they thought that was the end of it. But thank God, on the third day, he arose. He said, "Because I live, you shall live also." He wasn't talking about just breathing. He was talking about living an abundant life. Not a barely get by life, not a life filled with bad habits and addictions and lack and mediocrity. No, because of the price he paid, we have a right to live in total victory. Now, I want you to get that down on the inside. Not partial victory, to where we have a good family, we have good health, but we constantly struggle in our finances. That's not total victory. If God did it for you in one area, he can do it for you in another area. Get a vision for it. Don't get stagnant. Maybe God's blessed you and you have a good family, a good job, but you've had pain in your body for years and years. You used to stand against it. You used to believe you could be free, but now it's been so long, you've just decided, this is my lot in life.
So there is one of America's most popular Christian preachers saying, in effect, don't just value your good home and your good family. It's okay to want to get rich as well. It's okay to want to get rich, but somehow that's done in the name of Jesus.
That's an example of prosperity gospel, and there's a lot of that out there these days. Despite all this, though, I'm optimistic that we will see change. There's a long cyclical history in the United States of these periods of extreme individualism, these periods of rampant greed, and the political corruption that often goes with it. But there's almost always a backlash, then sort of a communitarian, reformist backlash that comes to those periods. You saw that after the Gilded Age with the Progressive era. You saw that after the Roaring '20s with the New Deal reforms. And I think that we're going to see that after. I mean, we've been living through this for now almost 30 years since the election of Ronald Reagan. I think that there is going to be a backlash. There's evidence of that backlash already. Look at the millennial generation, which I think is more communitarian than the Generation X, more believing in collective solutions. But we need to hear a different message from our leaders. And certainly it would be good to have a president who is out there talking about the importance of collective shared sacrifice.
You teach ethics to business students at Cornell, don't you?
I have done, yeah. I'm not doing that this year. I'm on leave at NYU, but yeah, I have done for many years.
And have you seen the nature of your students change? Has the challenge of teaching ethics to business students changed over the years?
There will be a lot of interest in ethics now with all the scandals breaking. We saw it in the 80s. There was a big surge of interest in ethics. It tends to go in cycles too. Once a few people get caught red-handed doing something wrong and there are conspicuous jail sentences, then I think there's a big flood of interest in business ethics. The course I taught was not required, and so the students who took it were not the ones who most needed to take it. They were students who were probably going to be hewing to the fine ethical line, whether they took the course or not. But I think we're seeing a movement now towards required ethics courses, and they seem to have an effect. The more you think about something, the more it sort of enters your consciousness when you decide what to do.
What do you teach them? What's in the syllabus?
Well, one of the most optimistic messages I feel I have to offer them is that you're not necessarily a chump if you're an ethical person. So think about this. You're up for promotion, and imagine that you ask your boss, can you think of somebody if you lost an envelope with $10,000 in it at a big stadium, you get home, you realize you've lost it, can you think of any, but it had your name and address on it, can you think of someone you feel sure would return it? And most people, they ponder that, and yeah, I think so-and-so would, yeah, I'm sure so-and-so would do it. You want your boss to think you'd be the kind of person who would return that envelope. How would he know? Well, people have hunches about who would in that situation, and in some experimental tests we've done, their hunches turn out to be pretty good. So we're more transparent than we realize. If you're the kind of person who would keep that envelope, others are going to have that suspicion about you.
We talked at the beginning about some of the new things being attached to the new version of the bailout bill, exempting some people from the alternative minimum tax who would otherwise come under it, tax breaks for certain corporations, even mental health provisions. Is it possible to put some kind of pro-ethics incentives in a bill like that?
You know, I don't think that's where the change is going to come. I think that you know, we're seeing in the Obama campaign, just to cite one example, it's not so much a what can this campaign do for me moment. It's really harks back to the John F. Kennedy campaign, where Kennedy inspired people by asking them to pose the question, what can I do for my country?
And McCain, in fairness, is all about country first, as he puts it.
Yeah, and so I think these appeals are starting to resonate. As David said, they're cyclical. There was a great book, Albert Hirschman's 1982 book, Shifting Involvements. You know, you get tired of trying to be a good person in an era where everyone's good. You know, you can't score points being good. It's too hard. So it reverts back to the greedy trend. And so it just goes back and forth in cycles.
David Callahan, what about the role of technology in some of this? I don't think that a human being could have come up with all those mortgage security derivatives without computers, which can turn them into abstractions and, you know, come up with this kind of thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's a role of computers, a role of technology, or at least human interaction with technology in some of this.
Well, technology certainly facilitates cheating in any number of ways. Technology, I think, also feeds that part of our culture that wants instant gratification. People can get so much information so quickly, can get in touch with anybody anytime. I think it's hard in that kind of technology-infused culture to have patience, to have the kind of work ethic, perhaps, that we associated with earlier times. On the other hand, technology can also make it easier to catch cheaters. You see this in schools with Turnitin.com, which is this new system for catching students who cheat. So technology cuts both ways.
Do you think that there is a different attitude toward cheating in different income groups or socioeconomic groups? I mean, maybe the old, notion would have been that poorer people would tend to cheat or steal more than others because they're not getting by in the legit economy, so they would have the incentive. But we also see a lot of upper middle class people being railed against here for either lying on their mortgage applications or just trying to get, not just enough house into the mortgage market, like some of the people getting Fannie Mae loans, but trying to get more and more McMansion kinds of homes. I don't know. Does this break down in different ways along class lines?
Different people cheat for different reasons. The rich often cheat because they think they're above the rules. They think that they can get away with it. If they get caught, they can hire the best lawyers. They can hire PR firms. I think Martha Stewart perhaps is an example of that. She had a chance to plea bargain and avoid prison. Instead, she spent millions on lawyers and PR help. There's often a sense that the rules don't apply. Leona Helmsley famously said, that it's only the little people who pay taxes. Meanwhile, I think that ordinary people may cheat because they feel, hey, the system's stacked against them, that the big shots are getting away with cheating. They're often not getting punished for cheating. Why not level the playing field a little in my own favor? Also, the ordinary people can have a lot of economic anxiety. Certainly, you saw this with the real estate boom, that people doing those liar loans to get in before the prices went up even further.
Let me ask you before we run out of time to put your principles of economics hat back on and just tell us if you've come out one way or the other about this bailout bill.
Yeah, I think we need to have some kind of a bill that will prevent the big credit meltdown. It's very troublesome to bail out people who were making money by pushing this paper and creating a lot of bad debt. Nobody wants to do that, but the question is, are we willing to let the economy flounder for 10 years like the Japanese economy did back in the 90s? I don't think that's a good trade. So I think we need rules that will prevent this from happening again, but let's not spend 10 years in a deep depression, just to show people that they can't get away with something.
And does it surprise you that we're seeing Dennis Kucinich and Jeb Hensarling, Michael Moore and Rush Limbaugh on the same indignant side of this question, saying vote no on these bills? Is there some kind of, you know, right-left morality that tends toward the extremes in either party?
No, I mean, the right-wingers hate the bill because it's big government in spades, and people on the left hate the bill because it's bailing out the Wall Street firms that made billions by selling these mortgage-backed securities. And there are plenty of good reasons to hate this bill. The problem is that if something isn't done, there could be a major meltdown that will hurt everybody. The other thing to keep in mind is that in many ways, Wall Street got left holding the bag. If you look at what happened, lots of individuals lying about their income, lots of mortgage brokerage firms kind of facilitating that lying, a lot of bad loans made all across the country, and all of them being funneled up to Wall Street, which ends up with all these mortgage-backed securities that are now worth very little money.
Well, maybe for one last recollection of history, didn't Herbert Hoover, after the banking crisis started in the late 20s, take the advice of one of his people and decide to not do very much so that society would cleanse itself of all that excess? But of course, the result was the Great Depression.
Yeah, that wasn't the right move, we now know. It's a good time to step in early, not wait for all this to happen.
And yet it begat the Depression generation that we now call the greatest generation for its thrifty and frugal values.
Right. Well, some people have said, I've heard it in recent weeks, gee, the United States could really use a depression to get its values back on track.
Are you willing to go there?
No, I think depressions tend to be terrible for a lot of things. It can bring out the worst in people as well. Don't forget that the Depression was a period of a lot of political right-wing extremism and nationalism in this country.
Robert Frank, David Callahan, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
A lot to think about, a lot of good context and thought. Thank you very much. Coming up in a minute, did the Beijing Olympics punch any holes in the great firewall of China? This is Brian Lehrer Live.
Ma, guess what? I went back to college. No, I didn't quit my job. I'm finishing my degree with the CUNY Online Bachelor's in Business. I interact online with real City University of New York faculty on a schedule that fits my busy life. Ma, you should look who's teaching at CUNY. And it all leads to a high-quality Bachelor of Science degree in business. I can attend class anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, even at your house Friday night for dinner.
The CUNY Online Baccalaureate. Get back to business.
Hey, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, he's so cute. How do you know him?
Come on, Donovan, do it like I taught you. Love the new tattoo, Sarah. Let's go!
Dude, that's Sarah. The girl in the pink shirt. That's the girl I was telling you about.
Oh, that's Sarah?
Theater 2 on your left. Hey, Sarah. What color underwear today?
Hey, Sarah. So when you want to post something new?
Anything you post online, anyone can see. Family, friends.
See you later, Sarah.
Even not so friendly people. Think before you post.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. The Olympic Games, they were supposed to open China to the world, inspire more democracy. But did they? Is the home of that fabulous bird's nest still a cage for those who want to talk truth to power, or even just log on to CNN? Joining us, Gobin Yang. He's a professor of Asian and Mideastern cultures at Barnard College and Columbia University and writes about the internet and civil society in China. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
It seemed like before the Olympics, everybody was talking about Tibet and Darfur. There were all those protests as the Olympic torch was going from place to place. Once the Olympics started, nothing. Was that just my impression?
Yeah, that's true. I think the Olympics, the major events of the Olympics, the opening ceremonies, and then the games and so on, really focused attention on the events. And I think the protest activities that took place before then were basically disappeared. And I guess one of the major reasons, of course, is that most of the sponsors would like to focus attention on the events.
And maybe NBC, which had the games, thought it wouldn't be such good television to focus on. Of course, conflict is good television, so maybe there was nothing for them to willfully ignore.
Well, there's big business in the Olympics, and all these years of preparations for these events, and I think that's really on the top of the concerns of many of the sponsors of the Olympics.
And you know who else turned out to be China's best friend during those 3 weeks? Russia, by invading Georgia. And so if the major media in the United States wanted to anoint a big bad foreign villain, there was Russia stepping right into the void and kind of sucking all the attention away from China. Do you think that was a big factor?
That was almost happened in China, but it didn't quite, because it took a lot of the Chinese by surprise, and there were comments on the internet that, well, Russians are doing something surprising at this point. But then very soon people's attention turned back to the Olympics.
To the Olympics, but not to the politics surrounding some of those issues.
Right.
Is the internet in a freer state today than it was before the Olympic Games?
Very hard to say. I think, as you mentioned earlier on, there were a lot of expectations that the Olympics would bring a more open society, would bring more freedom of speech, of a more open internet. That happened for a brief moment during the Olympics, and we all know that the Chinese government made concessions and compromises when it was raised that some of the websites, foreign websites, were still blocked, and then they were unblocked for a period of time. But as far as I can tell, there are no sort of real political moves to institutionalize a more open media in the long run.
What about any other aspect of openness, freedom of speech, pro-democracy moves by the Chinese government as a result of the Olympics? Anything?
Well, a lot of things happening. One of the major recent events is the tainted milk crisis, and this crisis has been one of the most serious issues in recent Chinese history, really. And there have been a lot of debates online. I think when the issue came out, again, the internet, people on the internet really pushed this to the front line, in a sense, and then the mass media, the mainstream media, covered the events.
Did the government try to cover it up at first?
There were attempts to cover this, and this happens quite often in the recent few years. But then it often happens that the internet actually served to open up in ways that really challenged, undermined government efforts to cover up the issues.
Here is a video, and this admittedly is from the Falun Gong-affiliated New Tang Dynasty Television, headquartered here in New York. Here's a little of what they had to say recently.
In other news revolving around the Olympics, 2 elderly women in Beijing have been dealt a harsh sentence for applying for a permit to protest during the Olympics. Neighbors Wu Dianyuan, age 79, and Wang Yishu Ying, age 77, were forcibly evicted from their homes in 2001. They thought the special protest zones set up during the Olympics would give them a chance to air their grievances. On August 5th this year, they went to the Public Security Bureau to apply for permission to protest. They were interrogated for 10 hours, but were ultimately unsuccessful. So they kept going back, and each time they went, they were neither approved nor denied. On their 4th visit, the 2 women were sentenced to a 1-year term of re-education through labor for so-called disturbing the public order. According to the written order, Wu and Wang did not have to serve the 1-year term inside a labor camp, as long as they followed regulations restricting their movement and that they did not apply to protest again.
Are you familiar with that incident? Do you know that to be true as reported there?
That is true. That actually is one of the most unfortunate events that happened during the Olympics, and it provoked a lot of outrage in China, again online, because mainly I've been observing what is happening in China online. And one reason, of course, is that this concerned two elderly women. One I think is 79, and this kind of issues tend to provoke a lot of indignation among the general citizens. But of course, the issue itself is a long-standing concern in China, that the relocation caused by major commercial development projects has been quite prevalent in China around the country, and it is one of the most important issues that people talk about online, and they often trigger online protests as well as street protest activities. So this, I think, really sort of was a surprising, very, very sort of outrageous event during the Olympics.
Now, you talk about the activity online around this, and yet to many Americans, this may, provoke some cognitive dissonance, thinking, oh, wait, China doesn't allow that kind of thing to go on. They have 30,000 censors or whatever. We've been told stopping dissident activity or discussion online. I know you're writing a book, The Power of the Internet in China, Citizen Activism Online, which is supposed to come out next year. How is it that people are getting around the censors to say things that the government may not want to be percolating in the population?
This is really a very complicated issue. That on one hand, we all know that the internet is very much controlled. There are, the Great Firewall we know all the methods of control, but we don't know as much about how people, on one hand, bypass control in raising their concerns. But we also don't know that actually there's a lot of commercial business interest in contentious activities. And that is interesting because, if I have time to elaborate on this a little bit, because the internet businesses now flourish on internet traffic. Business, bulletin boards, online forums, blogs, and so on. They are popular businesses because people use them, people visit them. Hits are very important. So it's a sort of attention economy. Contentious activities tend to drive up this kind of page visits, page views, and therefore there is a kind of business interest in contentious activities. Major business websites, although of course they have to be very, very careful that those contentious activities don't go beyond the limits.
Same in this country. The media tries to stoke controversy until the controversy seems threatening to the media,
right?
And then they try to tamp it down. We have a page view up on our screen right now. This is the result on the Chinese language website. You can take a look at it over there too. Searching Tiananmen on Google. Can you give us a sense of what we're seeing? We're seeing the comparison is on the left side is the English language American Google searching Tiananmen, and you see the images of the tanks and all of that. And on the Chinese controlled site, it's very different, showing Tiananmen Square itself and ceremonies and buildings. Why do they come up so different?
I've tried this myself, and I got the same different results. The one that shows all the beautiful images of Tiananmen Square is the Google.cn version of Google. Google.cn is the Chinese version of Google, and the other one is the regular Google, Google.com. And this shows very clearly that websites in China, including Google.cn, are very much controlled. There are some websites are blocked, filtered. The search engines are filtered.
Is it also a cultural difference that here in the United States, our view of Tiananmen Square is, or even the term Tiananmen Square, is so automatically associated with the incident there in 1989? Whereas to Chinese people, Tiananmen Square is Tiananmen Square. And yes, it's associated with that, but it's associated with so much more.
Well, depending on who you ask, I'm not sure how much of a cultural difference, but certainly for many Chinese, the Tiananmen Square is a symbol of pride. But for others who are more familiar with the history of 1989, it's a different kind of symbol. But the difference here is interesting in the sense that the Google.cm you get these images, beautiful images, but those more sort of savvy internet users in China, and many of them they can bypass this kind of blocking with a very small softwares. And people I talk to, they can easily access the other kind of Google images.
Now, the Chinese people aren't happy with the internet monitoring. This web video from another new Tang Dynasty television report has garnered 600,000 views since August.
When CCTV reporter Hu Ziwei announced her divorce on the Olympic Channel, the clip was widely circulated online. But soon afterward, the Chinese Communist Party announced it will control online video website viewing. Websites like YouTube, Wikipedia, and MySpace have all been blocked. Mainland internet users like Mr. Chow are very upset about this.
I always use software tools to break the internet blockade, such as FreeDoor, Wujie, Garden, Shijie, Tong, and Fire Phoenix.
China's internet population is expected to increase to over 250 million people this year. Chinese mainly use the internet for entertainment. About 40% read the news, and just over 10% use it for email.
So that video actually listed the names of programs that people in China use to get around the censors?
I think there are probably about a dozen this kind of softwares to get around the website blocking. There are a number of interesting things in this video. Actually, I should first correct one little factual error, because at the end it mentioned that 10% of the internet users in China use email. Actually, it's over 60% of internet users.
Of those who are internet users.
Exactly.
But what percentage of the billion people in China use the internet?
About 20% of 1/5 of the Chinese population now are internet users.
That's
and
a lot of users.
That's 250 something million Chinese population, and it's a major sort of business. Again, I'd like to mention that point. Another interesting point here mentioned is about how the internet users, use the internet for entertainment, for play. And that is very interesting, but important in ways that I think should be emphasized, which is that the entertainment part, that is true. Young people are using the internet for entertainment, for gaming communities, for example. But this kind of entertainment activities are also our social activities. They help to build communities. And these communities, on certain occasions, under certain conditions, can be mobilized. And I can give you an example.
Well, let me show an example that I think is important to talk about. Here is a video from a watershed moment in Chinese online activism and really in-person activism as well. In the town of Xiamen, citizens rise up here in protest of a chemical complex under construction in their city. Now, Professor Yang, tell us what we're seeing here.
Well, we're here seeing demonstrations in the city of Xiamen, and this particular clip comes from a popular Chinese version of YouTube, as you see on the top left side. That's literally translated as potato net. It's a popular Chinese version of YouTube. Basically, they are shouting that we should protect Xiamen from being polluted, and they are fighting against a proposed project of a chemical factory. And the interesting thing about this story is that the mobilization that people organized through the internet bulletin boards, the announcement about the demonstration was circulated online, was circulated by cell phone. And then people just went there on that particular day at that particular time, and the demonstration started.
And is this an illicit video?
This was there for a short period of time, and you see this often, that in the middle of an event, a video would come out immediately and it would be circulated very quickly, but after a while it may disappear.
Now, a free-flowing internet doesn't always support the things that dissidents might want. In this New York Times video, we see pro-China sentiment online as well.
In just the last week, China has witnessed an unprecedented movement of cyber-nationalists, young, tech-savvy Chinese who are calling on their colleagues to join them against what they consider to be an insult to their national identity. This cyber movement crosses traditional boundaries. In the last week, overseas Chinese student communities linked through chat rooms have coordinated and staged worldwide demonstrations in Canada, Australia, the United States, France, and England. The protesters make claims of alleged media distortion in the coverage of the Tibetan riots and their aftermath. Western media organizations are increasingly finding themselves the target of Chinese nationalist sentiment, as Chinese state media has increased its attacks on and scrutiny of foreign media coverage. The movement of cyber nationalists is fueling itself now. A Chinese music video has been circulated widely on the internet by ordinary Chinese. The video blasts CNN with expletives and arouses patriotic fervor with the Chinese national anthem. More importantly, it ends by displaying a QQ number. The number refers to an internet discussion room for those interested in learning more. It's a virtual gathering space for both old members and new initiates. In Beijing, this is Jimmy Wang for the New York Times.
And I can tell you from Chinese Americans I know personally here, from people who've called my shows, that all of that protest around the Olympic torch and all of that enhanced a lot of Chinese folks' feelings toward their government.
Right. Well, this video is interesting. It really will take hours to elaborate on all those different messages. But it is true that observers find surprising that students today seems to be supporting their government when in '89 students were fighting against the government. We need to, I think, take into account what has happened in China since then.
Is it also because there has been a lot that's happened since then toward openness? Because again, Chinese Americans I know say the media in this country has too narrow a view when China is opening to its own people in the ways that it can.
I think so. So many things have happened, in these years. But one thing that is important is that this younger generation, they have grown up in the reform period, that they didn't experience the kind of lives that the students and intellectuals who were protesting in 1989 experienced. Yes. So they have a different view about the world. They have different lifestyles.
Guobin Young teaches at Barnard and Columbia as a forthcoming book. Look for it next year. We'll have you back when the book comes out. The Power of the Internet in China, Citizen Activism Online. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And that's it for tonight's show. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30, and we're available as a podcast. You can join the conversation at brianlehrer.tv. And don't forget my daily radio show, 10 o'clock every morning on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow morning, Senator Hillary Clinton joins us live. That's on WNYC at 93.9 FM, AM 820, and WNYC.org. Have a great night.